All right, so let's get into and kind of do a little history on the internet, all right? So first things first, who can tell me some history on the web? What's like the earliest part of the internet that you guys know of? Where did it start? Yeah.
I think it started with some professors that wanted to exchange their work.
Some documents?
Yes.
Okay. That was part of it, but I think it goes even back farther than that. Anybody else? Think of where it came from? And it's like super old, like your grandparents' old kind of deal. Anybody know who started it? Yeah, it's the military. So if we go back super far, ARPANET back in, I thought I just saw an image that looked kind of cool right there. Let's look at this one. 1957 looks like. That's what it's saying. I thought it was the 60s, but yeah, super old. ARPANET was doing a bunch of stuff, and DARPA project, and military was using stuff to send stuff back and forth. Forever ago, though, guys. Like, yeah, there's ARPA. You can see ARPANET in '62. They started doing a bunch of stuff. It didn't really make much headway, probably until the '80s or so. And they were, you know, a lot of academics were wanting to exchange papers around. That's kind of where Tim Berners-Lee came into play. You guys ever know him? They call him the father of the internet, and he developed like the markup language that we use to transfer stuff around, you know, HTML, and that could send documents around, but it wasn't that great. And then we had the commercial lift. That was, let's go back here. They have other sites on here I've run across. They're kind of nice. Let's look at this one. I don't like that one. And that's History Channel. I don't know. You guys can go dig into it. There's some videos too that really dive into it on the resources page. But yeah, so this one might be good. Oh no, this one talks about. Yeah, I like to use this one, although it's kind of older. We can look at it really quick. So in here you can kind of see 91, HTTP kind of came out, and HTML1 came out in 92, and we did have some browsers. And I think in 91, 92, we had a commercial ban lifted, and that allowed businesses to go launch their own servers on there. If you guys go out to like, you know, Web Archive, you can actually look at some of these old websites. Give me an old company, like, but a big company. Apple. Okay, so we'll look at apple.com, and we'll go back, and looks like their earliest was in 96, late 96 sometime. So we can look at that snapshot of their website. That's what it was. Their images aren't coming through, but you can see. Let's jump ahead maybe a year later. We'll look at, oh, so that one's coming through. That was Apple's website. Maybe, what was this, there it goes. And you can look at, you know, this Wayback Machine or this Web Archive. You can go back and look at what these old sites looked like back in the late 90s and early 2000s. You can see they were really starting to do a lot more back in the early 2000s in there somewhere. What's this, 2004? Let's take a look at that one and see how different it is. Yeah. So, you know, it's kind of interesting to see how the web came about. I know for me, the first time I ever got on the web, my friend, his dad, got this old dial-up account. I think it was probably 93, 94. And I remember I would go over and we'd have these little floppy disks. Has anybody ever seen a floppy disk before? Okay. They had two different kinds. They had like these big 5.5-inch ones. Again, this is like old man Curl talking right now. But I never saw these. I think these were like super old. But I did see these in school, and then we had these here, which had like 1.4 megs on them. and they were magnetic. So if you ever got them by like a magnet or something, it would erase them. And I remember, like, as friends, we would pirate, games and stuff. And I would go to my friend's house, like a stack of discs like this tall, and we'd have to put one in at a time. And if one in the series ever got messed up, the whole thing was ruined. It was a huge pain in the neck. And our hard drives had, like, I think my first hard drive had 100 or 200 megs on it or something. But that was, like, huge at the time. And I don't know, it was horrible. Those back in the day. But I remember, like, the day I got on the internet and we pirated a game online. And it took like 3 days to download like a few megs. It took forever. And it was, his house phone was also like held up during that time too. It was a long time. It wasn't 3 days, but it was days, though. I do remember that. His parents were really mad. They didn't know what to do about it. But I just remember thinking, like, that was awesome. And then, I don't know, is anybody even that old at all? Maybe a little bit. Do you remember dial-up, though?
Yeah, dial-up and phone.
Who's ever heard dial-up? Just curious. All right, so you guys can appreciate. Who's never heard dial-up before? No one, seriously, like, it's okay if you haven't. If you're that young and you've never heard it, we can play something here for you. I'm just curious. You've never heard it? Dial-up sound? Let's just do it, okay? We'll go find, all right. Every time you got on the internet, this was it right here. Yeah. And then your computer threw up in the back of the wall. And that was literally like you'd hear it coming out of your computer. And every time you went to, like, and it was funny too because AOL came out. Does anybody use AOL? I'm just curious. Who used that? All right. People associated the internet with AOL. Like that was the same thing for some reason. And I remember my mom, like I went and got on, I think it was Netscape at the time, and she just didn't understand the concept of how I was browsing the web through Netscape and not using AOL or something like that. It was weird. But do you guys remember all the millions of AOL discs that came in the mail or CDs? Like, how many of these stupid things? I remember I had a friend, what you can do is if you ever get something in the mail and it comes with like that, prepaid postage, and these often did, he would take one of these discs and then wrap up like a huge concrete block and then slap one of those labels, the AOL label, and then just start mailing back old tires and bricks and crap to AOL because they had that return the sender thing on them. Anyways, I always thought it was really funny. But yeah, tons of these things in the mail. It's just weird to think about. Yeah. So that was kind of the late 90s. You guys remember what happened like in the 2000s in there somewhere? Around the year 2000, 2001. Half of you guys probably weren't even born then. I don't know, maybe you were. Not that old. Maybe, I don't know. I'm just assuming you guys are all youngins. Well, Internet Explorer was out, I think, a little bit before that, but Internet Explorer never really picked up steam until, maybe it got popular around then. Internet Explorer 6 is really what got popular, even though it was a piece of garbage at the time. Have you guys ever heard of like the .com bubble at all? Who's ever heard of that? Does anyone know what that is? Anyone tell me?
I don't know exactly what caused it to fall, but there's just like a lot of optimism about like the value of the internet, kind of like Bitcoin.
Yeah, so totally like Bitcoin. That's totally what it is. The .com bubble. So these companies were getting online for the first time, and all these investors were like, this is where the future's headed. E-commerce, right? And are we there? Right? Yeah, we totally are there. And so all these companies, I think Pets.com, and I mean, there's a ton of them that invested millions of dollars, and all these huge companies were starting up, and these big buildings and awesome office spaces and all this stuff. And were people buying stuff online in the early 2000s? They weren't at all, okay? And all of these companies, for the most part, not all of them, but a lot of them all, went bust. And I mean, it probably talks about a bunch here. Napster just got sued. That's all what happened to them. But can anybody tell me some .com bubble companies that actually made it through that are still alive today?
Raptor Technologies, maybe?
I don't know about that. Probably the most famous is Amazon.com. They're one that made it through. They started as a bookstore back, I think, 96 or something like that. And Amazon's huge. I mean, you don't sell online unless you're selling through Amazon to some extent, right? And you can read up on this, but everybody put a ton of money in and then it tanked, and you can kind of see that history chart right there. And you know, it's kind of sad. Napster is a big thing going on in the 2000s. Let's fast forward to like mid 2000s. Can anybody tell me what was going on at that time? Yeah, we started seeing the beginnings of social media. I mean, Dig.com was a big one back then. Reddit kind of killed it off. We saw MySpace was huge, and then Facebook came in and took that away from them. You know, as a second mover. So we saw a lot of social media kind of take root and hold. Fast forward a few, yeah, go ahead.
Isn't that around the time Google started that?
So Google started up in the late 90s as well. They really got popular and big like 2000, 2001, 2002. Who was the king before Google? Does anybody know? Yahoo. Does anybody know what happened to Yahoo as of the last 10 years?
They got a new CEO.
Yeah, she came in. She was awesome. I don't want Yahoo's finance. I want to actually see your stocks. It's been funny to watch Yahoo. Yahoo's been a sad story. They did try. Let's just go Google and then look up Yahoo. You know, they had their big leak not too long ago.
Like a security breach or something?
Yeah. Wait, where's... I'm trying to look up stock prices, but I don't use finance. Well, whatever, we can look it up. But yeah, Yahoo got knocked out because Google could do it cheaper and faster and better. We can talk about some stuff there later on in the class some more. But, you know, then we saw cell phones kind of come out late 2000s. You know, smartphones, I should probably say. Who had the first smartphone? Anybody before 2010?
Yes.
Nokias, maybe some Palms, some Trios, some things in there. They were. Do you guys remember, like, what did they call those little pocket PCs? Is that what they were called? You know, Palm was one of them too, and you had to like use their special writing on there to actually write. Yeah, Blackberries. They were, yeah, Blackberries. Blackberries were huge too. That's another company that totally tanked, huh? Yeah, Palm Pilots. Nice. Yeah, I mean, those were awesome back then, but wow, it's crazy to see, like, in the last 10 years, how much that technology has changed, right? And I don't know about you guys, but thinking 10 years from now, like, how different. I mean, you look back 10 years and be like, holy cow, you know, like, that has changed so much. And 10 years from now kind of freaks me out a little bit. I don't know what we're going to have, but it'll be awesome, hopefully. So yeah, the web has changed quite a bit. We saw smartphones come out. What do you guys feel is going on right now?
Yahweh's getting really big.
Okay.
Competing with Apple and other markets.
Huawei, yeah. Yeah, so we're seeing a lot more tech companies come in and play. What technologies are emerging right now that you guys feel are up and coming? VR, okay. Yeah. Anything else other than VR? AI. So what do you mean by that? Machine learning? What is that, though?
Like it's itself.
Yeah, it writes its own. What is it, that Go problem? What's that game that they did? AlphaGo, yeah. And chess, I think. I can't remember what I read on this, but it seems like last year they wrote, you know, this computer to go out and learn this game, and it became like the grand champion, that could, way better than humans, and beat this game. And then later that afternoon went and learned chess, and then taught itself and became the best chess master of all time or something. Like, it's cool to watch this machine learning. Essentially, it's computers writing their own algorithms and teaching themselves on how to do things. So that's huge and upcoming. Yeah.
So could you use AI for security, like online security?
Maybe. They're doing all kinds of cool things. They're trying to apply that into cancer research. They're trying to, you can, anything. You look at autonomous cars today. That's another huge thing coming up and coming right now, that it can study how a road's coming towards you and being able to predict, if a deer's going to jump out in front of you, or do different things like that. Like, that's really awesome too. So the internet and technology as a whole, growing a ton. Does anybody know what Moore's Law is? Have you ever heard of that before?
Yeah, it usually deals with processors. I know they talk about a lot with processors.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the gradual increase of technology.
Yeah. So what the root of it is they say that the original is that the number of transistors in a chip will double every 18 months to 2 years, and it's been applied into other technologies as a whole. That cell phones are getting much smaller as far as the circuitry inside of it, even though they're getting bigger because of the screens. And processing power is getting much stronger and more powerful all the time. And for the most part, it's been held true the entire time. There's a lot of people that will say that different areas will kind of reach its physical limitation when stuff gets so tiny. We're talking like atom size, that can bottom out. But up to this point, it's been pretty amazing to watch technology grow. Growth of the internet. This only goes back to 2012. We can see people coming online, and how many more people and how much traffic's coming around. This has that exponential growth, which is interesting. And technology does grow exponentially. The one crazy thing I always tell my freshmen as you guys are coming into this, what's kind of funny is the technologies you're going to be learning as a freshman will be outdated by the time you graduate. That's kind of daunting or whatnot, but that's technology. It lays a good foundation for you in what you're doing, but stuff changes so fast, and we do see that growth. And it's pretty cool to watch, but a little intimidating as well. Let's go through really quickly here and look at some histories of different protocols and different things. You can see browsers, Mosaic. Has anybody ever heard of Mosaic back in the day? I remember watching 90210 is an old show maybe some of you guys know about, and somebody went to a store, this kid, and bought a browser in a box. And I remember seeing that thinking, like, that's weird, and I didn't even know what the internet was. Did anybody ever use Netscape at all in here? Just curious. Okay, one. Netscape was like awesome for its day. Like, it really was cool and it was great. Opera, it's been around a long time, but not a lot of people use it. And then Internet Explorer, you guys probably all used, okay? Internet Explorer really gained traction, like 5.5, version 6 for sure. It was really sucky back then, but it was the best thing we had. Version 7 and 8 really started making some big strides later on, but you saw Safari come out, and Firefox was like super awesome when it came out. Everybody, who was geeky flipped to it. And then Chrome, too, was like super fast. In here, on these computers, you guys probably have Safari in front of you. I'd probably start using Chrome in here, okay? When we start talking some different development and pulling up some things that can help troubleshoot your code, Chrome tends to be a lot easier to use. So I would just stop using Safari and jump into Chrome, specifically in this class, especially when we get into some development. There are different protocols you can see here. The protocols like HTTP, sorry, but different markup languages. And you can see in HTML here, you have version 1, 2, 3, 4, and we can kind of go down. And then there was another one that was called XHTML that came out, and things. And then we saw HTML5 come about in here, and that's what we're going to learn in this class. Okay, and there's different versions of HTML5. let's pull that open here quick. And you can see here, they didn't have a first draft of version 5.0, but they made a recommendation out to the browsers. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But you can think of HTML like a set of rules we need to follow. And if all the browsers agree that we're going to follow those rules, then when we type something out, something is going to happen. There was a lot of browsers that would kind of do their own thing. Internet Explorer was notorious for this back in the day, that we would say we're going to use this tag, but then Internet Explorer would do it this way and display it this way. And it was a real pain in the neck. And so there's this group called the W3C that goes through and they say we're going to make this recommendation that we're going to use it this way and it's going to display that way. And you can see where they had a candidate, and then in 2014 they made their recommendation. And then 5.1 came out. They did a draft of it in 2012, made the recommendation 2015. 2016, we started using that. And then 5.2, you can see we started using last year. And right now they're making out a new draft for version 5.3, and no one's using it yet. The browsers haven't adopted it yet, but again, it's just a draft that they're in right now. And each version as we move along comes with some new functionality, and they might deprecate out or phase out some older parts of it, things like that. And so you can watch for those as they come along. In here, again, like I said, we're going to be using HTML5, but specifically 5.2. Okay. There is, let's see here. I do have another section I want to use for next class we're going to talk about. But I just want to make sure there's nothing else major here that I want to cover. Yeah, and maybe some markup languages, some slide stuff here. XML was a language we used, kind of allow us to use our own tags. We kind of combined. There's HTML and XML were combined into a thing called XHTML, but we still combine XML into HTML5 today. There may or may not be a question on that in the exam, but in the test. Yeah. Uses of the internet, e-commerce. How often do you guys buy stuff online? Yeah, I do too. Why do we buy stuff online? Yeah, it's often cheaper. I used to say tax, but now we're getting taxed all over online. Hate it. You guys podcast much? Social and blogs and what's cloud computing? Can you tell me what that is?
Storage through the internet.
Is it only storage though?
From what I've noticed so far, yes.
It's easy, yeah, but it's also computing power often you can use and have it do things for you. What percentage of the internet is mobile, would you guys say?
Probably maybe 40 to 50%.
What's that? Say it louder.
40 to 50%.
40 to 50%? It's almost 50-50. Let's see what this study says. So mobile devices are at 63%. This from mobile grew from 57.50 to 63. Time on the internet grew, and mobile bounce rates dropped. So, yeah, 37% of the traffic is desktop. In here, we're going to teach you how to build a desktop website. But would you guys all agree that's not really that applicable, right? Now, I do that because it's easier for learning to do that in a desktop environment, but I think in Module 8, here in a couple months, we're going to start showing you how to build inside of mobile. And in my advanced classes, we often do mobile-first websites, too. So you can see, that's a big difference there. And I don't know. I've got nothing else for you today. We're going to get into a bunch more next class. So I'll just stop the video here.